we have no Ferrero Rocher. We've got Kit Kats at the back. If that's,
Cheese twist food.
yeah.
Does that work when I push a button?
Right, that should work. Thank you all very much. That's very, very interesting. We are going to open it to the floor, but I must say, I did just want to ask Chris a particular question because human capital seems to be a common theme running through these things. And I read a survey recently that said, certainly for UK companies exporting overseas, apart from the cost of sterling it being very strong, the biggest thing was finding international expertise overseas. And this story about the headhunter in China, I just found that an absolutely fascinating story. And I just wondered whether you could just explain a little bit more what happened there.
I think the key thing is so we have this business, it's called Permaswitch, and it's a aerospace component business. And I think and the management team really didn't really know how to step it forward. It was an American business, and the whole sort of culture was, well, where do we go? How do we do it? There were so many options that were open to the company, and so they were looking for Mexico because it was familiar, it was close, it was 2 hours south of Los Angeles, and well, let's do what we know, and everybody else is in Mexico, so that must be good. But the sort of, I think fundamentally the thinking was wrong in that what they did is they appointed an external consultant to do a market report, and the market report said what you need to do is do a JV, and they came up with a JV in Mexico, which ultimately ceded control half of our business in Mexico, or also in North America. So it was quite a lazy way of thinking. It was, well, let's hire a consultant and let's get someone else to run our business for us. So when the thinking was changed to, well, actually, strategically, where in the world is good? China isn't yet a big aerospace market, but it does buy 10% of all aircraft in the world. And they've been leaning very heavily on Airbus and Boeing for local manufacturing. And so ultimately it became a strategic decision. And so we changed it from, we'd spent a year paddling around with external consultants telling us what to do, to, well, let's get off our behinds and go and do something ourselves. And it was just a very, it was a headhunter we'd used before, so it was we knew he was good, but they actually, out of the blue, gave us 4 candidates who were all fantastic. And we were struggling with, well, what is China and where do you go? And people had said, well, go to the west because the east is all expensive, and you need to be in Chengdu, and I couldn't even spell it. I didn't know where it was, and so basically we found the best thing to do was just to go and act, and basically get off ourselves, go and see it, talk to the customers, and at the end of the week, actually, not only we had completed our interviews, but we'd done our market study. We didn't need a PowerPoint set the slide to actually tell us what the right decision was. I think ultimately that's I think trust your judgment, and just you can actually deal with this in a week, versus we spent a year just paddling around not doing anything.
It's a great story, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we're going to open this up to the floor. Claire, will you help me?
That's why I'm here.
Oh, thank you. So please put your hands up, and what we'll do is we'll just take one at a time. So who wants to go first? Who was the bravest person? Right, over here. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Janice Cutman. Thank you, I enjoyed all the inputs very much indeed. I'm interested in knowing how you achieve a good cultural synergy in particular between all the different countries and the headquarters, how you get shared values, shared identity. I'm with you completely with the idea of having local people and building relationships. But it must be nice to know the other side of the coin from that point of view.
Shall I kick off?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a magic bullet on this, and I think it is different for each business. But there's no doubt that getting people from head office out to the local offices and vice versa, because that's sometimes missed, I think is really important. So that people, it's not just names to faces, it's understanding the way things work, both locally and at the head office. And that, I think, is part of it. The other thing, and it has become easier, I mean, I've been working internationally, I suppose, for the last, 20, 25 years, and there's no doubt that technology has improved it enormously. I mean, Skype, I regularly do Skypes and webcasts to our people around the world. And that makes a massive difference compared with where I would have been, 15 years ago. So that's, just a couple of things, I guess.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you've got to, I mean, we've got, so there's two things. I mean, our businesses are all very separate, but even within Bridgepoint, we have 9 offices across Europe, and it's in all of the normal capital cities. And we find ourselves gyrating between being one team, and then there's some siloed mentality, and then sort of one team. And I think we have to keep pulling back into kind of a one team culture. And the way to do that, the only way to do that, we find, is that you have to work together all the time. And so it's setting up mechanisms for you to work together. And that might be, we have sector teams so that there's people from the countries work together. It might be this China immersion cohort thing or Russia immersion. But there needs to be a constant interaction. Otherwise, the thing that you will get, certainly we find in our own business, that it's national cultures and team cultures are incredibly strong, stronger than sometimes corporate cultures.
That baseline is very, very important. Okay, next. Right at the back.
Hi, I'm Dave Leon. I work with WaterAid, and we work across 25 countries across Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And obviously, we always employ the people, the capacity is all what we're about. But I'm just interested from your perspective, because our biggest challenge, I would say, in making sure we deliver really good projects across Sub-Saharan Africa in particular, is employing the right people with the right skills and competencies in that market. It's very hard to find really high quality people. And for us, obviously, we can't compete salary-wise with the private sector, and whether there's a dearth of expertise in a particular country. Is there any experience other than paying top dollar to recruit the best people that you can share that might be useful to a charity organisation trying to really recruit and retain great talent in markets where there isn't perhaps as much as there needs to be?
I might take this one.
Yeah.
Perhaps being government, we're in a similar situation, unfortunately. I mean, we do have some countries where we're targeted, our people are targeted because we train them up, we take them straight out of college, we get them into the business world. They often come from a business degree background. We try to target people with business degrees. But then they get headhunted, especially in places like China, where there are people that want to have people that are local to bring on to multinational companies that have just arrived on the ground. And what better training to get them from the British government, that's got an international department that gives people the business cultures that they can actually easily transfer to another company. So we have those sorts of problems. What we try to do is to try and make sure that there are opportunities for people to develop within the organisation. We also try to make sure that there is a culture whereby people feel that they are part of the head office as well. So for example, I'll be going to a trade show called BET, which is at Excel for the education market at the end of January. And there'll be probably about 30 commercial officers who will be over here, working with British companies over here, but at the same time we'll make sure they meet lots of people from head office, that they get training over here, and that any new initiatives and different departures from company culture, departmental culture, we'll try to get those across to them. and it's treated as if that it's very important for them to come over, and they'll be doing it with other commercial officers from other countries around the world. So effectively it's developing a team mentality and getting them to understand, meeting face to face some of the clients that they might have only dealt with on the phone, so that they really feel that they are part of the team culture. But unfortunately, there will be some people that will be moved on because we can't pay the salaries that sometimes you get paid in the private sector. But saying that, we've got some brilliant commercial officers who've been doing this job for a long period of time, and they've got a lot of allegiance to us because we've helped them get a job that maybe they wouldn't have got previously, and it's interesting, and they feel that they're doing something that they learn a lot, so they understand about a sector. So there are other things that keep people on.
Can I just, David, I don't want to put you on the spotlight because I know you've only been with Crown Agents for a while, but it's, as I understand it, it's a private sector business beholden to a non-profit foundation, and it's quasi-public sector from its origins, and so there must be a lot of synergy there with WaterAid and the types of development people that you hire. Anything you can offer?
I think that there is a lot of synergy, but I'd like to endorse what you just said. I mean, I think that there is a tendency to think, well, we've got to pay more money. And as we all know, remuneration is not just about the money, it's also about the other things. So, for example, we would look to bring our people who are based in, say, Nigeria or indeed in Sierra Leone, back to London for training courses. That's a nice perk from their point of view. Doesn't end up costing us huge amounts of money, and we get people who understand the way we do things. So that kind of training and development thing, I think, is really important. The other thing I think is that you've got to accept you are going to lose people. I mean, I've had exactly the experience you did at LGC in China, where you bring people in, they develop their language skills, and then IBM comes in, or if not IBM, Ford or whoever, and hires them at some stupendous salary. And you've just got to accept that that's going to happen. And part of the key, I think, is making sure that you've got a steady stream of people coming in at the other end of the funnel as well. And in that respect, it's important not to overlook the whole friends and family recruitment, which it's amazing how many good people you can turn up from word of mouth in a lot of the places where we operate, certainly. And that just means that your cost of recruitment in far-flung places can actually end up being pretty low, and you're getting people who are effectively well known to your organisation already. So that's just another thought I might leave you with.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may add something on that, in our organizations where we use a lot of people, we've never been overpaying, and we believe that the first thing that makes people happy is pride of the job you're doing, pride of the company you're in. That's number one. Two is fun, having fun in your job. If you don't have fun in your job, then you're vulnerable. And last bit is, yes, the remuneration you get, but in that sequence.
Just a very quick personal anecdote on the fun bit. I was running an NGO many years ago, and I was overseeing our work in Afghanistan. And we had a group of local Afghan employees, and actually fun wasn't really part of their vernacular. It just didn't, well, for obvious reasons. So I flew them out to Dubai, and we went riding on quad bikes on the dunes and everything. And those staff were so loyal, and I'm not saying it was just the dunes and the quad bikes, but actually fun in the workplace is a very important thing. Right, okay.
Hi, I noticed a couple of you had sales and business development background. Question is, overseas, is there an appetite for business development skills from UK based, and just interns in general from the United Kingdom going overseas?
So this one, I think, yes, there's an appetite for UK people going overseas. Actually, there's a lot of appetite because, you believe it or not, UK people, first of all, are very experienced in many industries, and they're professional, and they're not so expensive in comparison to the European continent. That's true. And in fact, they qualify. as an example, we had a client from Saudi Arabia asking whether we could turn around an airline in a country where I wouldn't go on holidays actually. And within Will Group we were able to find somebody who'd been the CEO in one country, who'd been the CEO of a prestigious airline, and he was willing to give advice as to how the turnaround should be conducted. But then we needed somebody to go in that country where I wouldn't go on holidays, and we found that person in Belgium, and he was British. So, and that's one story among others. And that's also a reason why we created Will Group, because we feel that in many situations we have to make a decision whether we're going to send a local person on the job or whether that should be somebody from elsewhere. And our experience using people from elsewhere is very, very appealing, and it leads to results. And there's quite an unbalance in the needs of some countries and the potential of others. And clearly, the UK have a great potential for delivering results overseas.
What about in the business development area? Do you see any needs or are those generally homegrown in the countries that you're working in?
For the time being, I think that business development is homegrown for a cultural reason. The word culture was used many times, and I think that for cultural reasons it's easier for a UK person to talk to a UK client, and it's easier for a French person to talk to a French client, and so on and so forth. Bearing in mind that those guys, they have international needs. We are thinking at Will Group about adding at a later stage an international business development resource or group of resources. But right now we have enough to do by handling business development locally with an international perspective.
And one of the takeaways there is British interims needs to increase their rates a little bit. Right, next. Yes.
Thank you. Maybe you can't answer this question because it is pretty generic, and I suppose depends on the industry you're in. But in the next 5 years, are there any particular countries or areas you kind of identified as hotspots to expand into and invest into, and any where you think we should be going?
I'll be the real expert in a second, but I'll do a little bit. We do have what we call high growth countries. There's about 20 of them that the UKTI have identified as being important markets for British companies to go into for various different reasons. I'd like to say I could recite them all to you, but I can't. But it's amazing how quickly things can change. Russia was on that list, and it's no longer on that list because of the situation in Ukraine. But there are certain countries that keep coming up again and again and again, and that a lot of companies are looking at the moment. The one that people are looking at in South America was Brazil, but Brazil is quite a difficult place to do business, especially with regards to recruitment and international laws. There's quite a lot of different obstacles in place to foreign companies that are going over there. Saying that, with the help of UKTI, we can probably get you lawyers and accountants that can help you through that process. But the one place in South America that is really being looked on as being the next thing at the moment, well, there's two places, Colombia and Mexico. Both of those, Colombia sorted out a lot of its problems, and Mexico sorted out a lot of its problems. And those are both seen as important places. And then you've got the standard places like China is still looked at as being a hot prospect. And there's also Nigeria, which is one of these places that people are looking at the moment because it's got a booming economy. There's an election about to happen now, so people are probably got their hands in the pockets at the moment. But when things settle down after the election, despite what's happening in the north, it's got a lot of money there. Unfortunately, not very well distributed, but It's got a lot of business, and one fact is apparently it's the place that buys more Cristal champagne than any other country in the world.
Wow. Does that chime with your take on things?
I think for us, so we're in the mid-market, so this is companies 50 million of EV to 1 billion of EV, so it's sort of right there. And I think for us the key takeaway is the country needs a stable legal structure, and that's probably more than, and it needs to have a culture of enforcing that stable legal structure as well. And so if you have a mid-sized business, we actually don't look at all at periphery countries, and because most of these businesses they've got a strong European base, and they've got maybe 1 or 2 other countries, and they don't have the resources to go to 10 people, and we really focus it on, what are the 1, 2 or 3 places you're going to go, and that's a management bandwidth and a kind of overhead decision. Because to make a success of this, you have to kind of choose your battles. And so for us, actually, places like Africa, really difficult, really, really challenging. I know it's going to be, but the markets are just not big enough for most Western European businesses. I think South Africa is a safe landing spot, and you can actually cover a good part of sub-Saharan Africa from there, with a good team of people who know what they're doing. I think Europe, even within Europe, there's so much to do. We've got 8 offices, and we still struggle in southeastern Europe and eastern Europe. It's really difficult, really challenging. I think you have to be in China, whatever you do. You have to be there for revenue reasons, not cost reasons. That's the most important thing. I think Latin America, to your point, Brazil is a very difficult place to do business, but you actually have to be there. So I would choose 2 or 3 places maximum, probably even 1, and really bet on success in that.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Can I say something on that also? I think when you expand globally, there are 3 reasons to expand globally. Only 3. One is you believe that there's a market for your products and services. So, for instance, China is a big market, so everybody wants to go to China. 2, there are some very valuable resources in that country. Maybe there's not a huge market, but there are some very valuable resources in that country that you want to capture. That's, for instance, the case of India. In India, I don't believe there's a huge market for Will Group, apart from the international companies that are already in India or that are thinking of going to India. But let's face it, there's not a huge market for our services, at least not today and not in the 3 years to come. And but there are some very valuable people in India that can be top managers in international companies, and that's a reason for being in India. Actually, we staff engagements in the Middle East with Indian people. No problem. They compete with the British, they compete with the US people, and some of them are just so good. And the third reason for going international is innovation. And I think we sometimes underestimate the innovation things. For instance, if we take a country like Israel, you'll notice that the Indians and the Chinese have an important deal flow with Israel, and so have the Americans, with the Israelis, and so have the Americans. Why? Because Israel is just a huge land. Israel is just a huge land. And it makes sense for companies like Alcatel, Alcatel Hussein, for instance, but a number of international companies, to invest in Israel, and then they have to struggle. And in fact, even though there's no market for us in Israel, there's a reason for being there, just to help companies transform through innovation, whether Western companies invest in Israel or basically when Western companies or Chinese, Asian companies invest in Israel. And I think Europe is lagging there. I think we're not doing so well with it in comparison to the Chinese and to the Indians and to the Americans. And also when looking at the Israeli resources, they're very good, cheaper than the UK resources, to run very complex assignments in difficult countries. Preferably, not all countries of course, but some countries. So I think you have to struggle with those three dimensions: the market, the resources, and the innovation.
Very good, thank you, Patrick. We're having so much fun, we're running out of time. I'm going to take one final question and then hand over to Jason, who's going to close it for us. So who wants to get their last question? I think, oh yes, we've got one here, and then...
I think much of what's been said has been the fact that it's really important to go to the relevant places, to be there and to have face-to-faces. But if you can't have face-to-face, does Skype work or the equivalents? Telephone, you know, that's a real cultural thing, a telephone thing, and I just wondered if you had any examples of when it does work and when it doesn't.
So notwithstanding the twanging noise that we sometimes get, does it work?
I mean, it's not as good as face-to-face, obviously. I think it's very good if you've had face-to-face to keep the contact up, particularly Skype. But it is a bit of a cultural thing, I agree. I mean, I think it works better in some places than in others. I think it's difficult, my experience is it's difficult in the Middle East, because I think the culture there is about meeting people and you know, spending some time together and those kind of things. It seems to work. I found it work reasonably well in China, but only if you've already had some FaceTime with people, give it a cliche. The US is easy, because people just choose it. But that's been my personal experience.
I mean, just on I think there's some amazing video conference equipment that's out there now, and the price is coming right down. It's a lot better. It is a lot better than where Skype is today, and it feels so. In all our portfolio companies now, they have to get video conference, and actually, but the biggest benefit is probably within the companies themselves that are multinational, and it is so good. It is like having people in the room, almost, in the sense of we need a very high speed and a very big screen, and the big difference is that you can stay on there for a 2 or 3 hour proper meeting.
No.
And so I think you can actually do it. And there is one portfolio company which sometimes which is in the States, and sometimes we actually suddenly look up and realise that we haven't seen each other in several months. But we've been talking almost every week, on the video call. So I would say it's getting very close.
Thank you all.